How are we doing, everybody? Welcome back to the Sean Howard channel. I'm Ron Swanson. It's been a few days. Hope everyone is doing well. I had some life things to deal with, and everything's great. And I'm glad to be back. And I hope everyone's doing well. I don't know if you have watched the Fox Hollow Murders, Playground of a Serial Killer. Mad. Absolutely mad. And I'll give everybody a minute to sort of come in. We'll be back with Julia and updates with her case tomorrow. I've just not had a chance to look at anything, and the last thing I looked at was like Friday, I think. So it's just a case of giving me a minute to get back into all that. Excuse me. But it's good to be back. Tomorrow, we are starting our new relaunched Awaken with Beverly Rhodes mega show. Once a week, it'll be combining the cryptids and combining your usual Awaken with Beverly Rhodes. I'm looking forward to it. I'm wanting to sort of start refining some of the skill sets with these cards, with these runes, and a few other bits and bobs after some of the great success. Yeah, M13, it was just some life stuff, mate. Nothing harrowing or anything like that, but just stuff that needed done. Oh, and then I smashed my phone screen by dropping it out a window. So that's currently getting fixed with a wee man in a van. So yeah, but I don't know. Put a one in the side chat if you've seen this documentary series. It's now Kaz. If you're in America, it's Hulu. If you're in the UK, it's Disney Plus. Yeah, Katie. I mean, it died a horrible death, which was even worse because that's what I was using for work, and I wasn't at home. And yeah, it all went a bit mad. Luckily, though, we're all good. Now, if I can get some likes and shares, that would be great, because I'm getting algorithmically slapped for not being here. So, yeah. But like I say, we'll be back with Julia tomorrow. We're back with our mega new show with Beverly Rhodes. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it a lot. I also got tarot cards, but I've not delved into them yet. They're the ones that I've got. They make it easy tarot cards. So yeah. Now, make sure you keep an eye on the ProjectROOQ website. There'll be new updates there for everybody. And what else? Right. So let's dive into this, because we're going to go through a sort of recap news report, okay, of this whole case. Now, if you've not seen the docuseries, there may be some spoilers in this. Gary, right? I mean, Gary, right? You're the first one that's spoken up, right? What the? I mean, like, Gary, you must be like me, like you seen him when he asked about the unaliving of Herb, right? We're going to cover it. But I mean, what a mad thing to say on camera. Absolutely sideways mad yesterday, okay? This has been a week of a show. Yeah, I just came back and found out about all the fun stuff that's gone on this week. So yeah, it's been an interesting one. Katie Webb, all I'm saying is if you haven't used your free month or whatever it is you get from signing up for Disney Plus, get it used on this, because it's I mean, it's one of those maybe hour and 20-minute long episode per episode things, and we smashed it in a day, you know. Smashed it in a day. Honestly, the magic's high today. You can tell the eyes are speaking for themselves. So let's jump into this first news report. And so this is the title: docuseries prompts new tips in Fox Hollow Farm unalivings. So let's give everyone a little recap. Now, the accused unaliver, Herb Baumeister, is accused of 9 unalivings that have been identified. There was over 10,000 body fragments taken from this man's property, and there's been 9 people identified so far. And during the time when this took place in the 90s, it was all gay men, right? And it's quite embarrassing and disgusting when you look at a place in time, 30 years ago, how different society viewed gay men, gay women. And this case was failed. This was a shocking case where the police sort of looked at it and went, gay men, oh well. And it wasn't until this coroner took up the task of DNA testing these 10,000 fragments to find who these people were. And he explains all this towards the end of the docuseries, and he breaks down into tears because he's so ashamed that these people were failed for 30 years because of they were gay. This was, sorry, Linda Lou, I can't remember. We'll find out as this goes. I don't want to misquote myself. So we'll jump into this. Pam, how are you? Plotter, how are you? Lisa, Lynn, what is happening? Kaza, M13. Michael, what is happening? Ciego, Bailey, Mrs. Armstrong, how are you? Laura, who else we got here? Fuber, my guy, what is happening? Linda Lou, what is happening? Patricia, everyone, hope you're having a good day. Bailey. All right, let's jump into this. Again, if you've not seen this, there could be spoilers, so I do apologize.
First tonight,
and it's only coming out of one of my earphones. So if it's doing that for you, it's doing that for me. I can't fix it.
With new developments in the case of accused serial killer Herb Baumeister.
There is word tonight the Hamilton County coroner is close to naming another victim who hadn't even been reported missing, a big development in this case. Baumeister lived on an 18-acre property in Westfield called Fox Hollow Farm. That's where, since the 90s, investigators have found the remains of 9 identified murder victims, mostly gay men.
And that's not all. Police have located 10,000 bone fragments and bones scattered across the farm, meaning there are believed to be even more victims. And now ABC News Studios' new docuseries, The Fox Hollow Murders, Playground of a Serial Killer, is leading to new tips.
WRTV's Rachel Wilkerson sat down with the Hamilton County coroner today to find out what he hopes this new exposure could mean for the future of the case.
Hamilton County Coroner Jeff Jellison says since the ABC News Studios docuseries first aired, he's received more than 500 calls and tips regarding the case.
It was a killing field.
Okay, so this is the coroner. This is the guy who's taken it upon himself to identify everyone.
Fox Hollow Farm in Westfield, Indiana.
You have 18 acres, 10,000 remains scattered over that size.
Jellison says remains found throughout the property were placed on a shelf and forgotten until his office revisited the case nearly 30 years later.
The unknown is really terrible. I mean, it's torture.
Years without answers for families like Debbie Falls. Remains found at the farm were identified as belonging to her brother, Richie Hamilton.
All we had was a couple bone fragments, and some teeth.
Jellison is now responding to each message or call received from people.
Okay, so it's not 10,000 individual human remains. This is the maddest thing, M13. They reckon they found 50% of the bone fragments in this area, okay? And it's 10. So what they think has happened is if you burn a body, they said, it won't turn to ash. You've got to cremate it, right? Whereas if you do set them on fire, the bones become super brittle, right? So he was allegedly burning them in huge burn piles, smashing them all up and scattering them everywhere. But if you see on the screen here just now, this was a set of handcuffs that was found with an arm bone through it. And I'll tell you something else. We love true crime. We love the legendary tales of true crime, right? As a community, as a channel, you know, some cases, the things you can learn about people, and I always say we learn from ours and others' mistakes, you know, and I'd never heard of this. Nothing. Because the guy who was allegedly the serial killer, Herb Baumeister, unalived himself. But there's so much in this that casts doubt. All right, and we're going to talk about this. Hopefully people like this, because there's a lot we can be talking about this. But yeah, like and share if you can, guys. Let's get back to this news report while I just prepare a ciggy here.
Well, across the country,
People have reached out to us that were family members of missing persons that want to provide family reference swab, DNA swabs, to hopefully get some closure for them. We've also had a tremendous response of people complimenting our office's work in the investigation, as well as they've got questions.
the current owner of the property, Robert Graves, spoke about new details of the crimes also uncovered.
This is our pool room. This is where Mark said most of the men were probably killed.
Okay, so this guy here, right? I do believe at this point when this was filmed, he was the owner, and this guy's name is called Rob Graves. Rob Graves. Rob Graves. All right, Mark. You're gonna. We'll get to who Mark is. Don't worry, Linda. Don't worry. We will cover that. And in the docuseries, this is where they said that most of the unalivings allegedly took place. Now, with that theory in place, people started questioning, how do you then take an unalived man, drag him 300 yards from the house through thick woods and all this kind of stuff? It raised a lot of questions about, did he act alone? And that, Linda, is where Mark comes in. So, but Mark has a very interesting history with this, and you're going to find out.
The pool he used as a lure to get the guys to come up here. He said, you want to go swim in an indoor pool?
Jellison says he's in the planning stages of a potential new excavation of the property. He's also about to announce a new identification of a victim that just came back from genetic genealogy.
This person was not reported missing. He was not someone that was on our radar or we even suspected was a victim there.
Hopefully it's going to bring to light maybe some more victims' family members to give a DNA sample to try to identify these guys.
The coroner says he had two goals. One, to allow the victims' families to be able to share their stories, and two, to reach a nationwide audience. There are still remains that have not been identified. Jellison is asking anyone, if you have had a loved one go missing, specifically in the 1980s and 1990s, to come forward and provide DNA sampling. Reporting at Fox Hollow Farm.
Right. So during this docuseries, they talk about Mark, obviously, because Mark was the entire reason anyone went to Fox Hollow Farm. He went and reported to police that he was a victim of Herb, that he'd been lured back there, and he was asked to perform asphyxiation to Herb whilst he was in the pool. And then Herb said, well, can I reciprocate to you? He said no. I do believe in the original story that he said that Herb tried to unalive him with a rope around his neck. Yeah, remind me about that, Kaz. Remind me about that. And this news report was really what brought the police to the farm. Now, Mark goes on 30 years later to start talking on podcasts where he says all of that was a lie and he made it up just to get the police to go there, because he'd actually been dating Mark for a couple of years on and off. And in the docuseries, there's a crew, Paranormal Consequences, they're called, a guy and a girl. And the guy is gay and has a very sort of prolific moment during the documentary where he realizes that all of the bars where these people were abducted from, these gay men were abducted from, are the bars that he used to go to in his 20s, are the bars that he meets up with now. They talk about the difference in society in the 90s and how safe havens for gay men and women were these bars. And obviously, as a heterosexual white male, it's some things that you never really process that heavily, you know. I was also like 12 in the 90s, so it painted a really dark picture of how societal views have led to what happened at this farm, because it was also during the AIDS pandemic back in the day. And some of the bar owners were like, you know, it's sad to say that when you seen a regular who then suddenly was no longer coming in, you kind of thought the worst and lined it up with that disease. So it was this perfect storm for this to take place. Now, during Mark's initial interview with the police, he describes he describes exactly what somebody looks like if you're unaliving them with like this. And it's not very nice what happens. Something happens to the eyes, they become very swollen and pop out. The tongue, there's a lot of color changes. And when Mark gave his original statement, he talked about these during the sassy asphyxiation stuff that he was doing with Herb. But that doesn't occur in that. And that was one of the first points that was pointed out, that he either knew because he'd had it explained to him, or he knew because he'd seen it happen. And this is where this whole thing begins, where did Herb act alone at Fox Hollow Farm? And Mark, for years, didn't do interviews. He didn't show his face. He'd done a lot of interviews that were silhouetted, if you will. He acted very, very strange, because you got to remember, officially, up until the interview with Paranormal Consequences, which was what was being produced on the build-up, the documentary that you're seeing here, she spoke with Mark and he started confessing that he'd made up his statement to the police and that he'd been seeing Mark. And then he started sending her riddles. I'm not an unaliver. I'm not a witness. I am not a victim. I am not a coercer. What am I? Does anybody who watched that have an answer for him? Because I got one. I have got some real interesting views on Mark, because there's interjecting police reports that go throughout various points in time, and we're going to get to those, because again, Mark for 30 years was a hero. Okay, he was a hero. Okay, in this case, Rob Graves sees him as a hero of this case. But what is interesting, when a man says he's only been somewhere once and then comes back to this property, which, by the way, Rob Graves kept exactly as it was, hasn't changed anything, sleeps in the same bedroom as Herb, and wants to keep it as it is. But you've got to remember, they think they've found 50% of the bone fragments. 50%. And I mean, when they, in fact, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Let me just scooch over here. Okay, DNA technology and witness revelations expose dark secrets of Fox Hollow Farm case. And this was a couple of weeks ago. Let's have a listen.
In U.S. history. Throughout the 90s, police say Herb Baumeister targeted gay men at nightclubs, coaxing them back to his Indianapolis estate and later killing and burying them. Now a Hamilton County coroner is using new DNA technology to identify the human remains and bring closure to victims' families.
This killer, he's the Dahmer you've never heard
Yeah.
of. It was like Gacy's basement.
Yeah.
More and more men are going missing.
Police thought these people had just run away. The family never had answers.
I've got a big problem with that, and I'm not going to let them be forgotten any longer. We need to go back.
The Fox Hollow Murders docuseries follows coroner Jeff Jellison as he revisits the case decades later, raising unsettling questions about potential accomplices, missing evidence, and a key witness whose story keeps changing. Hamilton County Coroner Jeff Jellison joins me now for more on that.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Jeff, thanks for coming on. This story it feels like there's so many layers here. So what made you
Jeff's the freaking hero in this, by the way. This is the G. And also the big mustache guy whose name I can't remember, but wait till you hear about this guy. The mustache dude is wild.
decide to go back and reinvestigate this case decades later?
We renewed the investigation as a result of a phone call that I received in 2022 from the Allen Livingston family.
Yeah, Livingston.
They indicated to me that Alan's mother was ill, and they believed that Alan was a victim at Fox Hollow Farms, and they wanted to be able to provide Alan's mother with some closure before she passed.
So what were some of the biggest discoveries that stood out to you when you started looking back into this case?
I think the biggest discovery was when I found out we had 10,000 bone and bone fragments. That's huge. That's the second largest investigation of unidentified human remains in this country, second only to the World Trade Center.
Now, the docuseries features
Just think about that for a second, right? The second largest pile of unidentified bodies, only second to the Trade Center. You can your brain can kind of process the sheer devastation when two towers full of people fell over or collapsed. But when the second one on the list is a farm, and it's a serial unaliver we're talking about, this is mad. This is mad, right? And keep in mind, one of the victims whose body was found there was never even declared as being missing. It's wild. Let's continue.
features an exclusive interview with a survivor, but it ends up raising some questions about his relationship with Baumeister. What else can you tell us about that?
Mark Goodyear is who you're referring to, and he's definitely an interesting individual from an investigator standpoint. There's many layers to Mr. Goodyear. Some suspect he was an accomplice, and he knows a lot about the case, and that's concerning.
So what's next in this case, and what do you hope viewers take away from this docuseries?
We're embedded in this investigation. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to work diligently to identify these remains. The important part of this investigation today, 30 years after the case occurred, is to provide families with closure, and those remains represent people. And these people have sat on a shelf at the University of Indianapolis for 30 years.
Literally sat in bags on a university shelf for 30 years.
We need to get them off that shelf into a final resting place.
All right.
And you know, it's crazy. He talks about the Livingston family. And the cousin of the deceased member of that family contacted him, the coroner, and asked him if he could help identify his cousin, because the mother of this man, you know, sadly was very sick and he wanted to get it resolved. And the very first DNA match that came back was his. The very first one. There's a lot of really weird hand of a higher involvement in that, if you see what I'm saying. Now, I just want to go in and have a look at something. Because I do believe... Okay, here we go. So, looking at Mark now, it's sort of sunk into you guys just how horrific what went on was. And after we've looked into, in fact, before we do that, there's one more thing I want to show you about Herb, right? Herb, the man who was allegedly the serial unaliver, he was interviewed on television during the 90s about a raccoon on the road, right, who had been painted over with the lines on the road machine, and he thought that this animal deserved... I mean, just watch this, knowing that this man was the prime suspect in the unaliving of, could be 25, could be more people. And this was an interview that made the news about this animal. Just watch this.
The Indiana Department of Transportation maintains over 11,000 miles of roadway, and we paint those miles of roadway each year. And this is just an isolated incident that happened.
The drive-by striping, whatever. Herb Baumeister of Carmel saw it all. I said to myself.
So this is the guy here. This is Herb Baumeister. This is the owner of the farm, whose land it was at the center of it all.
Son, they're gonna hit that raccoon with a spray gun, and sure enough, they just striped right over its face and neck. Didn't even move it. No effort to get it out of the way. So I happened to have a Polaroid with me, so I took a shot at the thing. A raccoon, which met its demise on the yellow line, became one with the paint. The raccoon has since been removed. This is all that's left. This was just, the painter should have had a chalk line drawn around his career.
All right. So he's absolutely blown away at the fact that the disrespect of this animal who was dead on the road not being moved. Okay? Pretty weird, right? But what's even weirder is just over that hill behind him there was his burn pile. And these were the woods in which the bone fragments were all found. On purpose, maybe? Was this like a flex? Don't know. But Herb and his family owned a bunch of thrift stores. And I think it was called Save a Lot. I think it's called Save a Lot. And there was one day, and this is so important, because see, if I hadn't remembered this, it's kind of really easy to be like, oh no. Because I'm telling you now, we could have an open debate night about all of this, because you could almost put a theory forward, right, where Herb is completely innocent. I know that sounds mad, right? But I mean, you could. But then you could also, not just about aliens, Jeremiah, not just about aliens. I would say it's about the truth. Whether that's true crime, bad people that need some exposing, paranormal, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of a mixed bag. So there was a report from one of the staff members from one of his shops that there was one day where furniture wasn't selling in his shop. So the staff member suggested that they lower the price. And she said, just like that, she'd never seen this happen before. He absolutely flipped out, went bright red and started throwing all the furniture, into a trash compactor and shouting and throwing and all that kind of stuff. And there was another incident where he invited this woman who worked for him, same lady, into his office and said, hey, have a look at this. And he opens a filing cabinet, and inside was just loads of rotting food. And he said, hey, isn't this really cool? It's mad. So he was allegedly an openly gay, well, not a secretly gay man with a family and a wife and all this kind of stuff. And all of this was meant to have taken place when his wife would go away with his kids for the summer. Now, there is also reports, okay, of Mark Goodyear picking up people in his truck and bringing them back here. And he said that he was house sitting. Okay. So that doesn't mean that Herb wasn't there, but it does open up the possibility that it could have been Mark who was seducing and bringing these guys to his truck and then saying, hey, you want to come to my rich friend's house and luring them back, possibly allegedly. Because the reports get weirder. Mark's already openly admitted to lying to the police. But then there was a moment where the Paranormal Consequences film crew had taken Mark Goodyear back to the house that he allegedly had only been in once and allegedly almost, got end-gamed, if you will. And he changes his story a lot. But one of the things he done was he would take off his shoes whenever he entered this house. And one of the mustache investigator guy in the series, he pointed out that often depicts how people act on hallowed ground or sacred ground, or it was just weird, right? And nothing about Mark Goodyear is normal. The way he acts, the way he expresses himself, his narcissistic, what's the word? Bouncing maybe is the word I'm thinking, because every time he was asked to elaborate on something, the way that he shut down the questions was phenomenal. And he is either bored out of his nut and is just wanting some attention and lying about everything, or lying about his involvement in everything, because Uber Fuber, that man and his body language and all of it was just, he knew how to not to try and come across like he was lying in some state, in some element. It's just wild. So Mark is most likely not. Jeremiah. So yeah, this story, like I say, this all took place in the 90s. This is a 30-year-old cold case that got reopened. Deflection. See, here's the thing. He's admitted to lying, okay? And then we have, is it Leroy? I feel like the guy's name is Leroy, right? And Leroy gave a police report, okay, that again was never really followed up. And it was who he gave the police report to that was the main thing in this. It was the way that it had all filtered through him being arrested for something. I think it was something like that. And he was just spilling the beans. But he talks about a man in a raincoat with a big hat and a mask on making him sit outside in the patio at Fox Hollow Farm, where he said that he witnessed somebody being pew-pewed 3 times with a pistol and then pewed 1 time with a big shot pew-pew. And the person who was restraining the person was Mark Goodyear, and the person who pulled the trigger was Herb Baumeister. And then they ran. Now, all I'm saying is Mark goes on to say that this person, Leroy, he feels like he could have, you know, embellished this story because he's not right in the head. Because I'm not being funny, right? Why would you let them run off the farm? Right? Why would you let them run off the farm? Why? Why would you ever let them leave? You've got 2 pew-pews and there's 2 of you, and you're just going to let some guy run away. It doesn't make any sense. Unless there was 3 of them. Unless there was 3 of them. And he didn't run off the farm. He just got on with his job. Because why would you let them off after watching Yellow Jackets? Why? I don't know if I've seen that one. Hang on. Dun-dun. Yellow Jackets. Yellow Jackets, an American thriller TV series about creator Ashley and a group of teenagers involved in 96 playing. Is that right? Oh. Is that right? Is that right? Yellow Jackets? Is this a made up thing? Is it like is that a fictional thing? Let me know more about Yellow Jackets. If it looks like a TV show. I sent you the trailer, Ron. Is it? Yeah, but is it a fictional thing or a non-fictional thing? I swear to God, side chat, just help me out here. It's not real. Out of here. Jesus. Try to talk about freaking. You're going to confuse me. Okay, you're going to confuse me, and then I'm going to come back next week and be like, I've just watched Yellow Jackets. Maddest documentary I've ever seen. That could have happened. Okay, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it looks good. So where are we? We're over here. So we had Leroy's report. So I'm telling you now, how in the world does Leroy get away with that, allegedly, unless he's involved? He's no longer with us, by the way, so we can speculate. Because it doesn't make any sense. Right? It doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make any sense that Herb Baumeister, this guy, before he unalived himself, called his lawyer and told his lawyer to watch out for a guy called Mark Goodyear who's going to be going after his family. And that Mark Goodyear woke him up trying to unalive him by choking him. But then you also have Mark talking about how Herb used to like to keep the swimming pool misty, so you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And then the games would begin. And he'd make people repeat over and over, describing what somebody's face looked like I said earlier about the eyes and the tongue and all of this. Over and over, describing it out loud, describing it out loud. And there's quite a lot of twisted moments, right, where you get this insight into one of 2 things. The reality of Herb Baumeister, the reality of Mark Goodyear in reverse, reverse place with Herb, or the fictional delusional mind of a man talking a lot of crap. Because I'll tell you something, he is withholding and lying a bunch. Leroy GC was one of the individuals who was quoted as having a police report against Mark Goodyear and Herb Baumeister at Hollows Farm during this case, where he spoke to police and said that he witnessed an unaliving, and it was never followed up. Now, GC, this is all based in the 90s, and it all contains predominantly gay men who were unalived. And during this time, they weren't really cared about. And these 10,000 human remains, body fragments, all sat on a shelf for 30 years. You know, it's funny, Pab, because so did Google earlier. Google got confused too. It's really sad. It's really sad. Now, the weird thing is, Mark tells of videotapes. Videotapes stacked from floor to ceiling in this sort of cupboard. And he talks about what he was shown. Oh yeah, Mark, like Mark Goodyear and Herb were, yeah, it was a time where a lot of gay men weren't openly out. Excuse me. So, what was I just saying? God, I'm sorry, I've sidetracked my own brain having a drink. Hang on. One second. All right. So yeah, Mark, he repeatedly. Oh yeah, there was 10,000 bone fragments. Yeah, well that's the thing. They estimate that they have never recovered all the bone fragments. They reckon they've recovered 50% that's on the property. It's bonkers. It's completely bonkers. It really, really is. And oh, that's what it was. Hang on. Yeah, that's what it was. So there's crime scene photographs of the farm, and inside the farm there is a room. And in one of the photographs, there is a air vent, okay, that has the sort of classic American looking air vent-y thing in the ceiling, but with one screw out, and the whole thing, if this is the roof, the vent was sort of open like this. And they think that's where he hid the camera, and there was a chaise longue or a fancy couch in that room, and he thinks that's where possibly some of the unaliving or shenanigans went on. And Mark said that he's seen a video that was partially obscured, as if the camera lens was pushed up against something, which would completely match up with the thick metal lip, if you will, of this air vent grill. And Mark goes on to say that although you couldn't really see what was taking place fully, when you caught glimpses of it, it was horrendous. And then imagine that level of horror stacked from floor to ceiling in this cupboard. Then Herb Baumeister was awoken because he was sleeping in his car. And in the back seat, it was noticed that there was a huge brown moving box full of VHS tapes. Okay? Full of VHS tapes. I imagine they are now a big pile of burnt plastic in a field, perhaps somewhere. Who knows? But we're just going to have a little look, and we're just going to ask ourselves one other thing as well. Mark also said a couple of very interesting things about the unaliving of Herb, and talks about Herb in a way that describes this double life, about Herb, how he was stalking him, and how Mark would stand up on the tables in gay bars and say, "Do not go with this man, he will be your unaliver. You know, beware of this man." He said he was always honest with Herb and told him that he'd been to the police. And he apparently, Herb allegedly just continued to stalk him, go to his house, all this stuff. You know, it was a bit odd for the investigators to find out that this man, who apparently almost got unalived by Herb a couple of days later, was out to dinner with him. Because in actual fact, they'd known each other for a couple of years. Now, Mark talks about a pew-pew being brought by Herb, and the two of them sitting and watching as the news reported on Fox Hollow Farm, which was owned by Herb, being excavated, these body parts being found. They're watching it all live. And that is when apparently Herb fled, wrote his unaliving note, phoned his lawyer to warn him about Mark Goodyear, and then unalived himself. Now, what's really interesting is there was nothing in that unaliving note about any murders. Unaliving, sorry. There was nothing. There was nothing. Hang on 1 second, everybody. How adorable are these? Like tiny Converse. What size these? Tiny shoes. Look at that. Oh, tiny little guys. All right. Keep on. Right. Hang on a second, everybody. All right. So all these tapes, okay? And keep in mind, this is the 90s, man. This is like shoulder-mounted era, okay? So when we talk about, oh, I'm going to hide a camera in an air vent, it is going to be like a meme. It is going to be, it's going to have that big flashy red light on it. You know what I'm saying? So whatever happened to the tapes? Whatever happened to this long history? Because I'll tell you something, you want to talk about a twisted tale. The sister of one of the victims worked in one of the shops owned by Herb. She worked with him every day. Every day. Just try and imagine that your brother is missing. And it turns out years later that the prime suspect is your own employer. It's just, this is the maddest case of anything ever. Just to be clear. You know what I mean? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? I'm just kidding. You got your free choice. The case of Herb Baumeister is being explored in Nutrient. Dog Series Hollow Farm. Mara was a playground serial killer. But this is what I want to read through with you guys. Fox Hollow serial unaliver secret tapes could reveal unaliving horrors if ever found. The case of Herb Baumeister is being explored. So I've not watched this. This might just be a recap of the same thing as we've just watched. If it's a big recap and doesn't talk about the tapes, we'll move on.
My name is Manetta Bronstein.
Okay, here we go.
And I worked with Dr. Herb Baumeister in surgery department.
So Dr. Herb Baumeister, I do believe, is the father of Herb Baumeister.
Both at Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis, Indiana, and Winona Hospital, also in Indianapolis, Indiana. In retrospect, even though at the time it raised a question mark in my mind, was one time Dr. Baumeister told me that he was very curious and couldn't understand why his son, Herb Jr., had purchased a used hearse And my response to that was, gosh, why'd you do that? And Dr. Baumeister said, well, I asked him, why did you buy this? I used hers. And he said, well, Dad, it just makes it better to go out on dates with. And I was really impressed by that in a not so good way. It bothered me quite a lot that why would somebody buy a used hearse, to drive around? What girl's going to go out with a guy like that? That's what was going through my mind. And the subject was never really brought up again, except he did mention in my hearing later, after that conversation between the two of us, our room was set up and we were doing surgery, and the surgeon happened to say something about, how's your son doing, blah, blah. So, well, funny thing, he bought a used hearse, and that conversation was between the two of them. I didn't have any part of it, but I was present. He came to my house. It would have been about 1968 or 69.
69.
And I'm not really sure, but it's sometime in that time period. And he was there about an hour, and we talked. He did most of the talking, and he was very cordial, very, gentleman. And he's about my age. I think he's a year or so younger. But while we were talking, his little brother was sitting on the couch, and he pulled a pad of paper out from his shirt pocket and a pen, and he said, oh, wait a minute, Herb, I want to write that down. What you just said, I want to write that down. So we stopped talking, and Herb repeated.
This is the former work colleague of Herb Baumeister Sr. Also, fun fact, I think just as you're all dealing with this lady's story, I'm pretty sure she's younger than the former president of America.
So his little brother could write on this pad. And he did that several times while we were talking. And I found that really strange. I've never, it's just not normal to me. But I'd say the conversation, I don't remember anything about it particularly. I think everybody certainly everybody I talked to of the old gang, the anesthesiologists, surgeons that I knew, that I can hardly get the words out.
No,
everyone
you're
was very
joking.
surprised,
You're
very
joking.
shocked.
We hadn't, Doris. We hadn't noticed, love. You're doing great. Carry on.
We all knew Herb and his family. They were normal people. There wasn't anything weird that we knew of. And the fact that this son of his had turned into being a prolific serial killer was just unimaginable.
Allegedly.
And the fact that it could happen to that family, there was no reason to think there was anything wrong.
It was. I'm not gonna lie.
That would give rise to such a behavior. I think we all thought the same thing. It's troublesome. I can only say he must have been such a chameleon.
Right.
Because I was unaware of any problem when I visited with him, when he was at my house.
It's interesting. There's another guy who allegedly is a prolific unaliver, and that was the toolbox unaliver. Oh, what was his name? Hang on a second. Oh no, the toy box. Is it the toy box? It's a toy box, isn't it? Yeah, it's a toy box, because the toolbox is another one. Hang on. Yeah. Dr. David Parker Ray. This guy. Holy smokes. Like, Herb Baumeister never made it to court. Neither did David Parker Ray. And both stories are insane. Insane.
And like I say, he was there at least an hour talking. there was just normal, except for his little brother, the note taker. And his father, having known him for 10 years, it just was a great shock. And, I'm glad there was obviously no inclination on his part to do me any harm. Thank goodness. But it certainly crosses your mind thinking, I've had a brush with the devil, so to speak. It's unnerving that someone can.
Yeah, all right, we get it. So these tapes, all right. Herb Baumeister, here he is. I mean, how unassuming of a man, right? I mean, literally 90s accountant looking guy. Wall Street, just a normal business looking dude, right? Completely unbecoming. And you think to yourself, there must have been signs, right? There must have been. How good can these guys possibly be at hiding all of this? How do you unalive possibly 25 people? If we believe what Mark Goodyear's story says, then that's apparently was it 56 actually? I can't remember, but it was a whack of people. It was a wad. The whites under his eyes. Yeah, I'll remember that one. And this is the property. And when investigators went in, this guy had set up mannequins everywhere. Now, just as for creepy factor, okay? For creepy factor, mannequins set up behind the bar, mannequins all around the pool. I'm just saying to you right now, I don't care if you're straight, gay, male, female, you ever go back to a mansion house alone and there's mannequins set up anywhere, unless it's appropriate, it's a designer and the mannequin is there with half a dress that's currently being designed, approved. But if there's just a bunch of mannequins mulling about, and even when you spoke to his shop advisors, the people that worked in his shop, right? They said that mannequins were everywhere, but it was like in the staff room, in the staff toilets, in the storeroom, there was mannequins everywhere, right? I mean, shudder. I'll tell you what was interesting though. I felt like they really just skimmed over the wife being interviewed and all this. There was a little bit, but she looked. It's weird. Does anyone know if I sort of say like? I felt like she was trying to give an impression that she was just this dumb wife. Does that make sense? It was weird. I bet he used to talk to them. Well, it's interesting when you think about the Hearst and how it makes it easier to go on dates, because you would have to lie a mannequin down in it, right? And now I'm not saying that's only what a Hearst could be used for, but you ain't like, they're not like, I mean, they're pretty rigid. You know what I'm saying? So if you wanted to dress one up and then drive it around, you'd have to kind of strap it to the roof like a surfboard, or slide that person in. You know what I'm saying? Also, I just want to say, right? Like, see if you ripped out the back of a hearse, you could pimp a hearse. Like, you could pimp a ride like that. I mean, I'm not it's not weird that someone's bought a hearse, right? Okay, we're running out of stuff in the world to dig up and make stuff with. We need to reuse some stuff. Okay, so that's not the weird thing for me. But again, that's just me. Yeah, that freaks me out. The hearse doesn't freak me out. Do you know what I'm saying? But I'm just a weirdo, man. I'm just a weirdo. A weirdo. Because I mean, you could make quite a kick-ass little one-person camper out of one of them. Do you know what I'm saying? You could. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Strip all that stuff out from the back, right? I'm just saying. I live in a... Yeah, all right. Yeah, you probably win for, like, spookiness in the side chat today. You know what I'm saying? I just want to say. So this is the property, and it's banging. Okay? It is banging. The property, the land, everything, it's banging and creepy. Okay? And mega under the want for paranormal investigators and all of this. Now you got to remember, it was a paranormal investigation team that started the ball rolling in all of this after they interviewed Mark on a Zoom call, and Mark confessed to lying to the police and being in a relationship for 2 years. But Mark seems to be, to me, the master of storytelling. Okay? Now don't get that twisted. Okay, a master of storytelling isn't somebody who can just fabricates or embellishes or can tell a good story or puts on a good narration voice. Welcome to this epic tale of Mark Goodyear. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a master at spinning a narrative, because he'll give you 70% of a story. Okay, and that 70% will consist of 60% fluff that you don't care about and 10% that you feel leads on the other 30%. It's almost like he likes to skim the story so that his part in all of this is so ambiguous, like it's so non-character. He can't put him in a slot, you know? But yeah, mannequins, man. Nah. So I'm trying to find you a picture of the mustache guy. So this is Eric Pragner. This was the guy who wanted to find the remains of his cousin, and his phone call to the coroner's office kickstarted the ball rolling on the 30-year later inquiry into the DNA of these victims. And of course, he was the first body that was identified. It's crazy. It really, really is. The whole story. I can't believe the mustache guy there's not a picture of him in this. There was a memorial made for all the victims in August 29, 2024. This was last year. Like, just try and comprehend that you're one of these people's family members, right? And you had to go through at least a decade of dealing with prejudice because of them being gay. And the world catches up with how we are now. And just through one man wanting to do the right thing, a coroner wanting to do the right thing, all of this is now here. Jeffrey Allen Jeff Jones, Alan Lee Livingston, Manuel Resendez, Johnny Lee Johnny Byer, Richard Douglas Hamilton Jr., Stephen Sperlin Hale, Alan Wayne Brossard, Roger Allen Goodlett, Michael Frederick Mike Cairn. All those who've been identified. Just another 10,000 bits to go through. And then another 50% of it to uncover. Also, as well, the memorial is not just a plaque. There's like a big sculpture thing. Also, as well, right? Who designs these things? When there must just be artists sitting waiting to get a phone call from like a local mayor who's like, yeah, we need a memorial made. Okay, it's to do with this absolutely horrendous thing that took part. And it's basically a massive oval stone with cracks through it with blue coloring in it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't know what I would do. I don't say I can do any better, but it's just a random. It's like, yeah, it's just one of them. It's just one of them. It's a mad case. And during the making of the documentary, all of the family members that wanted to went back, met up in the farm, walked around, laid some flowers down where they knew the last place of their loved one was. It was unreal. Oh, that's the wrong picture. This one. So this is the pool allegedly where things took place. I do think, though, this is a docu-series image of the pool as opposed to crime scene. I mean, here's another thing to sort of batter this home. This is what some of the remains are in. I mean, it's tiny. It's tiny. So we then swerve back to old Mark Goodyear and the final episode of this series, where Mark is interviewed. He's on camera. You can see his face. Let me just pull up some pictures here. So this is Mark. I will say one thing. Guy has got the most whitest teeth ever. Okay? Whatever this man has done wrong in his life, he has done nothing wrong to those teeth. Because they are some bangers. Okay? But this man is the epitome of sus. They go on to talk about the unaliving of Herb. He goes on to have a smoke outside where he's mic'd up, and you can hear him saying, "Why did you leave me alive? Why did you leave me alive? Why did you let me live?" All this stuff out loud. Okay. Theatrics. But when he's asked about the unaliving that allegedly happened to himself, right? He says he can't talk about it because he doesn't want to do 25 to life. What? So let me put an idea to you people. We have reports from the lawyer's statements that Herb Baumeister had warned his lawyer about Mark Goodyear. We have got reports of Mark choking Herb and him waking up. All proper, not witness, like legal testimony stuff, right? We've got one eyewitness account of apparently Mark and Herb being in collusion. We've got an unaliving note from apparently the world's most unknown serial unaliver ever, where he mentions nothing in his unaliving note. Nothing. He talks he talks in length about money troubles and his businesses and all of that. Doesn't say anything. Now, to me, I found that a little weird. But maybe not. I don't know. Serial killers have exists that do these things and have no want for notoriety. You know, so it could be that. Then you've got the suspiciousness of Leroy being allowed to run away. And the fact that Leroy and Mark and Mark's partner have all been friends up until Leroy's passing. Now, it's almost like if there was three of them, it was almost like they all tried to tell on each other at some point. Okay. But this man here, he asked a riddle, and I asked you guys if you had an answer for it. He's not a witness. He's not an accomplice. He's not a victim. He's not a lurer. Is he the creator? Okay. Because he often talks about his God standing beside him in this home. And I ask you this. If I bring a pork chop to a hungry dog that's chained up, okay, and I put the pork chop on the ground, and then I turn my back and I open the cage for the dog. Somehow I've done that with my back turned, okay? And the dog comes out and eats the pork chop. Who's to blame for that pork chop getting eaten? Because this man here, I call him now the keeper of secrets, okay? Because he is once again giving out little bits of information where he withholds key details. He doesn't want to talk about specific individuals. He got very nervous about the tapes. But I tell you something else. There was a couple of interviews with Rob Graves where Rob Graves looked real nervous. Okay. Big mustache guy came to talk to him. And I mean, he's all over the place and jittering his words. And Uber, there was one point that I thought was really, really interesting was when the paranormal team were doing their original filming with Mark at the property where he wasn't allowed to have his face seen. When Mark was leaving, before he answered any questions, Rob was stood in the hallway and he started walking backwards, right? He started walking backwards and then started being asked questions about Mark. And it was just such an odd moment. It really was. And I wonder what's going to happen because he said himself he's going to wait to see what the public verdict is about him. Am I a survivor? Am I an accomplice? Who knows? I mean, this is literally how he sells it. It's going to be fun to find out, right? I mean, what are you saying, mate? This man's never even been investigated until now. It's bonkers. Can you guys give me a little like, a little share? I really would appreciate it. I just want to say it. It's crazy. It's crazy. And about halfway through the story, right? How are we doing, Laura? How are you? Don't feel left out. Don't feel left out. Halfway through the story, you start to stop thinking about her Baumeister. And you're like, what is this guy doing? What is this guy actually all about? Because once you find out that he's lied to the police, and his first line to the documentary filmmaker, right, the most recent one, is he looks him dead in the eye when he says, we've been hearing a lot about this case. And he's like, oh no, the only reason you know anything about this case is because of me. And it's like, wow. When you talk about a narcissistic mindset and you have these preloaded, right, ideologies, when you have these preloaded things like that in the brain, if you have any idea how much time has been spent in that mindset, him telling himself how incredible what he's done, he is the hero. Excuse me, this bit of hair's gone rogue. There we go. All of it. Oh, he's feeling left out. Who is this guy? This guy. No, do you know what I think it is, Laura? I think he's waited for everyone to cop it. Okay, I think he's waited for everyone to be no longer on Earth, And now he's gone, tidy. No witnesses. I can say what I want. Because I'm telling you now, Laura, I've got a funny feeling if you knew this guy and he had something on you, he could be quite a scary dude. Allegedly. You know? But I don't think these people ended in the pool. I think these people were frog marched up to the frickin' hill and then unalived with the pew-pews. Or some of them were, because there was a bunch of shotgun shells found in the woods. There was this eyewitness report about the shotty and the smaller pew-pew. Yeah, so... Well, here's the thing. I don't remember them once talking about graves, Lulabelle. It was just a scattering of bones. And when I say the scattering of bones, like... The Rob Graves, the guy who bought the house, Lubell, right? When he first bought it, walked down to the tree line and found a whole femur sticking out the ground. All right? A whole femur! The biggest bone in the human body, the femur, right? Missed by police, missed by everyone, sat there for 30 years poking out the ground. It's so beyond what you think is normal because nobody would dug anything. There was no graves to find. It was burnt, scattered remains. Like there was a picture of a jawbone with teeth in it, just sat half propped up on a log. Maybe like the bottom third of one side of the jaw submerged in the ground, rest of it just sat there. It's mad. It's mad. Anyway, 1 second. I really do think the fact that so many people are no longer like with us in the world with this guy, I think we could be literally dealing with an actual Batman villain here. Like he literally gives me genuine Riddler vibes, like legitimate Riddler vibes. Right? I know that might sound stupid, but if anyone knows the proper deep rooted stories of the Riddler, like this is him. We're looking at him. Now, my pork chop analogy was when we had the report of it being apparently Mark Goodyear who brought this guy back and he didn't want to go in the house and all the rest of it. And he said that he was house sitting for Herb. We could either interpret that one of two ways, right? As the truth, and he was house sitting, which would raise the question of how much involvement Herb had if there was occasions when he was away and Mark Goodyear was still bringing people back to the house. But more than likely, allegedly, it could have been that Mark was the bait to lure in these young men. And he was happy to turn a blind eye once they went in the house or whatever. But it can't simply be a case of a man with no questions asking, bringing people back. And then ignoring it. Because that makes you an accomplice, right? Because he talks in too much detail about the unalivings and the techniques to know nothing. So, another thing though, let's go for this. Let's just assume for a second, right? Let's assume for a second there was no accomplice. Okay? It's a freaking horse farm, right? So I'm going to assume there's at least one horse mulling about, okay? At least one, okay? Do you know how much a horse can pull? More than a dude, anyway. So if there was ever a theory for there being one person, The only thing I can come up with is him dragging bodies, you know. But there's inconsistencies in Mark's stories. He told a story about a burn pile where he could see, you know, bodies, and it wasn't trying to be hidden, and it was right outside the kitchen, the room off the kitchen's main window. He said that it was a big burn pile there, and there was nothing found there. So there is this weird mix of embellishedness and fact and mystery and, dare I say, riddle surrounding Mark Goodyear. But I'll tell you this now. This is in no way the end of Mark Goodyear's story. Yeah, Uber Fuber, like, I'll be honest, the clip of this guy in the trailer was enough to make me doubt him. But listen, when I say doubt him, it could be everything from he's made it all up to get himself some clout, and he had virtually nothing to do with any of this, right the way up to he is the mastermind. That makes sense. I just don't know what. Yeah, right. Yeah, you're feeling the same, right? Yeah, I get that vibe too. Can I play I don't want to get slapped for copyright. That's the thing. But I have. So that's the live right now. Hang on a second. No, we don't need that. What is this one? Tour. Okay, so this is an apparent tour of the whole property 2 years ago. And I imagine this is Rob Grave that's going to be doing this tour. So we're going to play this clip.
At 6, we're getting a new look at the Westfield farm where police discovered dozens of remains from young men back in 1996.
Where do you get news reporter people from? Like this guy here, like he has come from a warehouse where you just order like middle-aged white dude. And I mean, he couldn't be any more white dude if he tried.
6.
Yeah, take a look here. Drone Cam 13 captured the latest images of Fox Hollow Farm this afternoon, 26 years after the gruesome discovery there. And it comes just 24 hours away after a renewed push to identify the rest of the unknown victims.
Tonight, our John Duran is taking us step-by-step through the significant locations on this infamous property.
You'll see this ravine.
26 years later,
This goes back to Cool Creek.
the memories are still fresh.
This is the area where most of the intact bones were found.
That's Rob Graves. I don't know what he thinks his name. It must have been this guy he was talking about.
It's history Robert Graves lives with.
When we first got here, we decided that
Is that right? Rob Graves.
we were going to try to put all this behind us, but you can't get away from it. It's
No, what else you can't get away from? The embarrassment of not doing up your top shirt button and then wearing a tie. Okay, because what has happened here is you've got your mum to tie that knot for you. Okay, that's what's happened here. Okay. And then a week later, when you knew this news report was coming, you've thrown that on and you are so unaware of how to wear a tie that you just haven't bothered clipping this on. I mean, I'm not being funny, mate. But come on.
it's always that.
Also, let's not even talk about the fact that it's a blue and white checkered shirt with a black and red tie. Train wreck.
place.
He moved into the Fox Hollow farm 15 years ago. But in 1996, it was the home of Herb Baumeister, who allegedly killed dozens of men and left their remains on the property.
This is where it happened.
Remains Graves still uncovers to this day.
We don't go looking for them, but they do turn up.
That's a lie. I'm telling you now. I'm not judging anyone, okay? But don't be telling me that you haven't gone looking for them, okay? You've pulled up every floorboard in that house, mate. Looked up, I mean, and I'm not. That's not a criticism. We would all be doing the same because that's just how the weird human condition works.
And I take them to the University of Indianapolis.
We will have to conduct a very large-scale investigation. And
Brilliant. That's great. That's great. Super helpful, YouTube.
Which DNA profiling is attempted on all of those samples because we have an open population. So we are unsure exactly how many people are represented.
Forensic teams from the University of Indianapolis were searching these woods for weeks back in 1996 behind the home of then owner Herb Baumeister. And they're excited there's a renewed interest in trying to find the identity of the remaining victims.
We do have an estimated 10,000 samples that need to be addressed here.
They need the victims' family members to come forward.
We have more unidentified human remains cases in the state of Indiana than we have family reference samples. So that means in general, not just from 26 years ago.
I think it's a good thing. There's certainly a lot of families that don't have answers.
And they're hoping these new efforts produce just that. In Hamilton County, John Duran, 13 News.
Thank you, John Duran. I mean, mad. The whole case is mad. The whole story is mad. None of it makes sense, right? None of it. Because let's just say, right? Let's just say, Herb, you did it, right? This is the mainstream theory. This is what the documentary is all about. Is the Dahmer you've never heard of, Herb Baumeister. The Dahmer you've never heard of. Worse than Gacy's basement. Mad. So let's just for a second say he did it. It's this whole thing of how could he have done it by himself, you know? But that is only a problem if everyone is unalived in the pool the way that Mark Goodyear described, which has been the theory, because up until now he's been a survivor and a hero. But what if it was different than that? What if it was different than that? And I'll tell you something else. It doesn't, I mean, it only troubles people that he couldn't have done this by himself when they're unalived in the house. Okay? But what's stopping you walking them up to the woods? Off you, come on, chop, chop, get walking. Come on, off with Pop. I mean, I'm just a guy on the internet, right? But that would mean that could be one way that he could have done all of this alone, okay? And how Mark Goodyear is now just sprinkling in some nonsense for his own gain. Or it could definitely be Mark and Herb working together. It could definitely be that on a different scale. It could be along the same lines as, you know, the wife who's being cheated on has no evidence but knows something's happening. Mark Goodyear in the same way could be like, oh yeah, that's weird that guy that I introduced to my partner last week is now gone missing. Do you know what I mean? Denial could be that. Or he could be the creator of it all. It could also involve this guy, Leroy. Or not. But it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me that you would unalive somebody in front of someone and then just let them run off. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Because all I'm saying is if you're 6 or 7 feet in front of me and I've just pew-pewed someone in front of you, and he talks about the guy in the long coat and the mask and the hat taking all of that off and saying, surprise, it's me, and it being Herb Baumeister. So I imagine that'll have taken 40 seconds maybe at the most. So he sat there. Then he gets up and he runs away while there's allegedly 2 people there who are armed with pew-pews. They either went to the stormtrooper school of shooting, right? It was either stormtrooper level accuracy, right? or there's more to this, right? Because and again, he's no longer here. But you hear Mark talk about the fact that they were very close friends up until the end, or his partner was very close friends. And it's really suspicious. No, it's all weird. The unaliving note, weird. The unaliving scenario, weird. What Mark said about it, weird. Like, all of these sort of witness reports about this rage or this weird side of Herb. And this. Then you've got this Mark Goodyear character. And all the different versions of testimonies, police reports. It's just weird. Because like I say, he's gone from being a hero and through his own words, not mine, he wants to see what the public think of him now. But his mannerisms, everything about this man is odd. That doesn't mean that he's involved. That doesn't mean he's guilty of anything. It just means the guy's odd. And all round odd. Like, I'm not being funny. It's, you know, I'm in no way comparing this man to Jimmy Savile, right? But you know, after all the stuff about Jimmy Savile came out, right? Everyone was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? You know, if this guy was to pass away and leave a memoir with a bunch of tapes, and then we found out he was the mastermind behind it all, we'd be like, doesn't surprise me, you know? Oh my God, do you mean Jaws from 007? Because if so, I'm seeing it a little bit. I was obsessed with Jaws from 007, from James Bond when I was a kid. Like, obsessed. I've always wanted all my teeth removed and a full set of titanium teeth. Like a full set of titanium, shiny titanium teeth. I would love that. With elongated canines, right? And like slightly elongated bottom canines, just so that it looked menacing, right? But then I imagined biting my cheek or my tongue, and I went off that idea. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Okay. Tell me you're holding in a fart without actually telling me you're holding in a fart right here, Mark Goodyear. So first of all, put a 1 in the side chat if you've seen this docu-series. Put a 2 if you haven't. That'll depend. Then that'll result in my next line of questioning, shall we say. Yeah, Finola, I don't know what you're talking about, but I hope you don't think I was busting your chops. Also, none of you have seen this. No one has seen this. I'm telling you now, you guys have got some homework to do. I'm telling you that right now. Every single one of you, I know well enough in this side chat now to know once you watch this, we'll have to do another one of these streams. Because you're all going to be like, I need to talk about this now. So, yeah, yes, Jaws from 007. Nice. But it's a mad one. Now, everybody, I'm telling you, it's just me and down south, my G. So, you guys need to go and watch this. Hulu in America and Disney in the UK. Gonna blow up and act like I don't know nobody. Legend. Just 10 out of 10 for meme history there. Too good. That was the Vine era, man. Like the Vine era And then the Vine migration over here was crazy. I think about the amazing woman who would be amazing to interview about you. Okay. Can you just message me again? And then if I don't get the message, I know I need to add you as a friend. But after the show today, which is in about 25 minutes, I'm going to be putting together the show for tomorrow. And then we're back to normal on Fridays again. And I'm editing a couple of interviews up for you guys. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, there is something about the teeth being that white. It's not even that they're that. It's not even the whiteness that creeps me out. There's so much tooth, right? So he's obviously had a little bit of receding gum line, but he's just managed. I mean, look at these back. I mean, it's a madness. It's a madness. It looks like he's been chewing on stones, but also, I mean, he's kept those teeth real good. Yeah, he is. I see. I felt like there was moments where he was very delighted with himself, but for me, there was a moment where he was getting asked about Leroy, and I thought he was going to show a lot more signs of panic and all of that during that line of questioning, but he never really. This is the documentary as well that I'm talking about. The Fox Hollow Unalivings, Playground of a Serial Unaliver. Okay? Wild. It's wild. You know, let me just see what else I can find. Give me a second. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a narration channel called Mr. Ballin on YouTube, and he covered this like 4 years ago, the story of it all. But it's interesting, I guess, because he'll be taking it from the perspective of when Mark Goodyear is still a hero in this, right? And then we've got another documentary called Herbert the Pervert. 10 out of 10 for that title. I'll tell you that right now. Which is all about, this is from 3 years ago, all about Herb Baumeister. So it's been out there, man. Like, this case has been out there. But it's wild considering how insane, right, the mishandling of police was on this case. Oh, you watched Mr. Ballin's story? Nice. Yeah, I like Mr. Ballin. He's interesting. Like oat sugar. It's funny because I remember, I'm pretty sure he had his channel started around about the time I started blowing up, like 6-7 years ago. And I'm pretty sure his channel, it was just on the rise when the first time that I'd spotted him. And now he's freaking literally Mr. Ballin. Okay, so I'm going to just read you. We're going to just read this the Daily Mail article. I think this is a good one to cover in more detail some of the random things that have been said by Mr. Mark Goodyear. So, give me a second as well so that I can make this a bit bigger. Close this. All right. The man long believed to be the sole survivor of Fox Hollow Farm unaliver Herb Baumeister has made a bombshell confession that he lied about what really happened that night. For 3 decades, Mark Goodyear claimed he was attacked by the notorious Indiana Indiana serial unaliver and was the only known survivor who managed to escape with his life. Unfortunately, it was his tip that was credited with leading cops to Baumeister and his depraved unaliving field of thousands of bones and human remains. But now, in a new 4-part ABC News stories docuseries, The Hollow Fox, the Fox Hollow Unalivings, a playground of a serial unaliver, Goodyear has admitted that he lied about that dark night in 1994 when he came face to face with one of America's worst serial unalivers. I told the police that he attacked me, he said. He didn't attack me. Nothing like that. Among this news shocking claims, Goodyear told ABC News Studios he was never attacked by Baumeister, and he had actually DUR'd the serial unaliver that he met, not just that one time, but countless times over the next 2 years, right up until Baumeister's unaliving. He claims Baumeister confessed to him that he had killed a staggering 56 victims in total, and that he even showed him a burning pile of bodies in the backyard of his 18-acre estate. Another extraordinary claim, Goodyear says that he was actually with Baumeister on the very day in 1996 that authorities swooped on Fox Hollow Farm and discovered thousands of human remains. In fact, Baumeister was at Goodyear's home in Indianapolis, where they were together watching the TV coverage of the search unfold before their eyes, he claims. The shocking details, which fly in the face of the story Goodyear told investigators back in the 90s, are revealed in what marks the first face-to-face on-camera made interview about this case that has haunted the Indianapolis community for 3 decades. While he admits lying about the relationships with several serial killers, Goodyear denies ever being involved with the unalivings. As several commentators of the show raised doubts about his credibility and even questioned whether he could have been Baumeister's accomplice. He was trying to take me down with him, Goodyear said. But guess what? He's effing dead, ain't he? Goodyear told ABC News Studies he met Baumeister in the 501 Club in downtown Indianapolis one night in August 1994. Baumeister was staring at the wall, which was covered with missing persons posters of the young men he had been lured to his estate and unalived. I could tell that he was gratified and he was gratified to look at these posters. It was not a normal encounter, Goodyear said. Goodyear claimed he approached Baumeister and spoke with him about the posters, telling him that he would really like to know what happened to these young men. They drove to Fox Hollow Farm, and when they arrived, Goodyear said Baumeister began to make chilling comments. He had done a bunch of white, he said. That's when he started talking about how silk was stronger than steel and putting a silk necktie around the throat. Here, was that guy? I wonder if that guy was wearing a silk necktie in that picture we've seen. In a police interview in July 1996, days after Baumeister's body was found in Canada, Goodyear told investigators Baumeister had gave him a drink he believed that was DURG'd. Suspicious, he claimed he had gone into the bathroom and poured it away. Then, when the two men went into the swimming pool room in the basement, Goodyear claimed that Baumeister came up behind him and put a pool hose around his neck and tried to strangle him with it. He managed to break free and lived to tell the tale. Now, this is the thing. In his original police report, he said this happened, and then he was left alone in the house and went for a look around and stayed the night and all of this. And at no point did they sort of say to him, well, if you were fearful for your life, why didn't you try and run away? It was really a mad one. He also claimed that he actually GUR'd Baumeister at one point rather than the other way around. However, Goodyear did say something terrifying happened that made him fear for his life. When he went out into the back porch, I think, we went into the back. I think he was going to kill me then, he said. He pointed to a burn pile that was up high, and there were embers glowing there from the fire, and he could clearly see what looked like human forms. Goodyear said he tried to act like everything was normal. He went on to describe how the very frightening little games Baumeister would like to play when they were surrounded by creepy mannequins. He wanted me to repeat after him. I really like to see the eyes bulging out. I like to see the tongue bulging out, the lips swelling and turning purple, and then cracking. You'd have to recite this to him word for word, though I thought, oh, he's strangling them. That's what he sees when he's strangling these people, he said. Following the encounter, Goodyear went to the police to offer investigating the string of disappearances. He even drove them around with the officer as they tried unsuccessfully to find to try and find. That's right. So he drove around with the police officer trying to find the estate, okay, but never found it. So he's went to the police, lied to get them to investigate it, but then has not given them, not taken them to the correct location. So that's withholding that information. In the summer of 1996, Goodyear then spotted, in the summer of 1996, Goodyear then spotted the man again in the bar. His friend noted down the license plate, and police were able to trace back the Baumeister, according to the 1996 police interview. The Goodyear claimed at the time was the first time he had seen Baumeister since the chilling night at Fox Farm. But now Goodyear has admitted to actually he saw Baumeister countless times between the first night in 1994 and the summer of 1996. So this is the younger looking Mark Goodyear. Well, he said he doesn't want to describe that as a relationship. When he was pressed, he refused to give the straight answer. That's another thing. He's good at not giving a straight answer to whether the two men were romantic or not. So this is 90s version of Mark Goodyear. He claimed Baumeister stalked him over the course of 2 years and just often showed up at his home. He was stalking me. I turned around and started stalking him, he said. Goodyear claimed he started following Baumeister around downtown Indianapolis bars and warned people against leaving with him. I'd stand up on furniture and scream out to the crowd, "Nobody leave with this man. He's the unaliver," he said. Goodyear claimed he would also call the police on Baumeister several times, 6 to 7 times a day, even when Baumeister was in the room with him at his home. But Baumeister was unfazed. He said he would tell him, "They're never going to believe you. They think you're crazy." Can you imagine if that's true? At one point, Goodyear claimed police officers turned up at his home and told him to leave Baumeister alone, insisting the serial unaliver was a family man. 2 years of that, him stalking me and telling me and tormenting me and teasing me constantly and knowing that nobody is coming to help. He'd tell me that every time. He'd tell me that nobody is coming. Nobody's coming to help you. And he was right. When police finally descended on Foxhole Farm in June 1996, they discovered human bones remains on the property. Goodyear claimed Baumeister was at his home watching the news coverage with him. He said Baumeister was armed with a pew-pew and figured he was going to unalive him, he said. Days later, on July 4th, 1996, Baumeister was found in the park in Canada. He'd unalived himself. A total of 9 victims were identified among the 10,000 human remains found at Foxhole Farm before the investigation was effectively shuttered. A new investigation was launched in 2022 by the Hamilton County's coroner office to identify the human remains. A 9th victim has since been named by the Hamilton County coroner, Jeff Gilson, told the dailymail.com. In January, the team is now very close to identifying 2 more victims. It is estimated that around 25 could have been unalived and the remains burned scattered around Foxhole Farm. Goodyear does not explain why he lied for years about his relationship with the notorious unaliver. The only known survivor has changed his story and been shrouded in doubt. I mean, tell me right now that you're not about to go and try and watch this documentary series. Just if you're not about to go and watch this, what is wrong with you? So, what do we all think, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, I know none of you have seen this, so it's not going to be as big a discussion as I thought it was. Not going to lie. But you gotta, because this is, honestly, this one was bonkers. And I often talk about the golden era of unalivers, the era of people not locking their doors, The era of no mobile phones, nothing, just landlines and payphones, no CCTV, no dash cams, no nothing. That era, okay? This is the last tail end of it. You know? Watch party is a great idea. Yeah, watch party is a great idea. People involved change the narrative. See, this is another one, Sparkle, right? Because let's say for a second that Mark Goodyear was more involved in this than we think, right? What's happened, Joseph? And again, for this particular discussion, you can go Accomplice right the way up to Mastermind, all right? Or even worse, what about we go one further? What if Mark Goodyear has been recorded by Herb doing something horrible? You know, what if you're told that this is like a big asphyxiation kink party, and Mark maybe didn't realize that he was doing something to somebody who's already unalived, and it's all been filmed, and now he's trapped in this weird web of blackmail and all of that. And I'm not saying that in any way is possible or is true, but I mean, it's a speculation fest. So it just makes you wonder, though. Oh, sweet. Nice one. The Haunting of Fox Hollow Farm, 2001 documentary / horror. All right, nice. It's just, and again, see if it was a normal dude who was like, yeah, I lied just to get them up there, and I'm sorry about all of that, and sure, okay. But this guy is so peculiar, all right? And I don't know why I'm still pink, by the way. I just want to point that out. I really don't. Okay. I've also lost half a stone in my first week of eating healthier. Big up. I don't know what you're talking about, Uber. I have no idea what you're trying to insinuate here. But it's crazy. All right. And Mark Goodyear doesn't do anything to help himself with his closing interview. The fact that he turned around and said, I cannot talk about the unaliving of Herb Baumeister because I don't want to do 25 to life. What if Mark Goodyear was with Herb? Because we know they were both together that day by Mark's admission, allegedly. So is it really too much to sort of put together that they could have left that house together, flee to Canada, right? And then something suspicious took place. It's crazy. And we're never going to know. I mean, there's so many serial unaliver cases where the serial unaliver goes to court, gets charged, and there's so many of those cases that have still got so many unanswered questions. But at least we've got somebody, at least we've got somebody to talk to or question or whatever. That's just not the case now. We've only got Mark Goodyear. And he's waited up until everybody else has passed away to change his story. But the Leroy guy, it sounded so much like a bunch of people panicking and telling on each other. Because although Mark Goodyear's initial interview was what sparked the police interest. It wasn't until they identified the car and they found out about Herb Baumeister that the police got involved. So we know now that the lies Mark told, he could have taken the police there much sooner. But it fits his narrative better that he was only there once. But he'd spent the last 2 years going there. It's mad. It is so mad. Yeah, there you go. That's right. That's exactly it, Jan. Sorry. That is exactly it. I just watched the docu-series on this, and it was mad. Also, as well, see when you've got a serial unaliving case with all of this weird stuff, and the guy who now owns it is called Rob Graves, it doesn't help. He lived down the road from me. Damn. Latricia, tell us, I mean, were you in that area when all this kicked off? Do you remember the case as it unfolded? Or was it just, something that you'd heard about? Tell me more, Latricia. Yeah, a lot of ghost shows cover that place, right? Yeah. It'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see. Hang on, Joseph. My brain's processing this. Joseph, it'd be interesting to look at ghost investigations that took place prior to any of the bodies being identified and seeing if any of the people's names came up. But surely there would be speculation and names could be out there. I just don't know. Nothing's going to stop us now by Starship from the film Mannequin. Serial Unaliver Anthem. All right. Which, by the way, is on Serial Unaliver Anthems Volume 2, available in Lulabelle's Etsy store right now. That's all made up. None of that was real. Shadow figures. Okay. Oh, man. So he said as well that Herb stunk of burnt hair all the time. Now, I'll be honest with you. I feel like that would have been something that would have been noted from staff members, from people he worked around. So I imagine this was the at-home version of Herb when you have a bonfire and you stink of it. We felt for his wife. Hang on a second, Latricia. Yes, Janie lived down the road from me. Damn. We felt sorry for his wife. What did Herb look like? I'll show you Herb. So this was Herb during this time period. Like, honest to God, I swear, like, if you looked up 90s accountant, this guy. Yeah, maybe Latricia, you could let us know how people felt towards the wife. I'm sorry, I keep calling her the wife. Mrs. Baumeister. There you go. Because I mean, they didn't really dive too much into the wife in the story. If I'm being honest, I'd be keeping my mouth shut. Do you know what I'm saying? I would just let Mark Goodyear go out and just say a madness. And then be like, oh, I'm glad I'm not having to do any more interviews. I thought politics, senator looking. I get that vibe too. It doesn't look like he would be out of place working for certain political cabinets. And, you know, there may have been a certain party where a certain lady of the evening needs rolled up in a carpet and put in the back of a Volkswagen and disappeared. Get that leg up, my G. You know what I'm saying? Well, Lulu, apparently his wife and kids would go away every summer, right? So there was this like period where all of the people, them going missing, kind of line up with summer and the wife not being there. And there's proof that the wife wasn't there and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, and again, she's not the first woman or partner of a monster to genuinely not know what the hell's going on, if that is the case. So I don't want to throw any shade on Mrs. Baumeister. You know, it's poor kids, yeah. It's just nuts. It really, really is. Now, I just want to double check a couple of things, my lovely, lovely people. I'm just waiting on the Meghan Markle documentary to start, and I just want to make sure all you lovely people. No one's underwater. Relax. All you lovely, lovely people will be automatically given the choice to go and watch that live stream. I just want to make sure I've done that. Yes. Well, I've not done it. The boss has done it. 10 out of 10 for Mr. Atwood. And I'm excited to be back with all you guys. Today, after this show, I'm working on a couple of big stories for you guys. One surrounds a very famous judge of a very famous talent show in the UK, and a couple of young ladies who've been involved with him that have some very interesting stories to tell. There's also an old interview with Nico Klaus and Patrick Vega that I'm editing up for you guys, and I've basically finished off, and now decided they need to do the final playthrough of the Occult documentary. So Ron's going to start chucking out some content, live streams to Ron, not content. Those are live streams, which is a kind of form of content, but actual edited content. So I'm excited. But yeah, there was nothing wrong, by the way. There was nothing going on. It was just real life stuff that needed Ron's attention. So it got my attention, and I just want to say a big thank you to the Sean Atwood management, the man himself, for just being. He is a really good man, is our Sean. He really, really is. Really is. So big shout out to you and a big thank you for being a wonderful, understanding man. So yeah. Mark Goodyear, Herb Baumeister, Fox Hollow Farm. Make sure you guys go and watch this, because you're going to be so triggered and wanting another chat about this. I'm telling you now. I was thinking as well, okay, that I might possibly start on a Sunday doing a weekly documentary review show, if you will, or in fact, maybe not even on the Sunday, or maybe one of the daily shows once a week will be review show where we all get, we pick a documentary, possibly one that's just on YouTube. We can all watch it and then we can kind of break it down together, because I think it's kind of fun. But I don't want to like paywall people with picking stuff that's on streaming services all the time, because some of them just take the mick, man, with the money that they want. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I'm literally just holding off for the next show to start. So just fire me some questions. Let me know how you're all doing. Well, sorry, it'll be true crime stuff. Maybe true crime with a bit of like paranormal edge to it sometimes. But the Daily Show is going to continue on. I think with the information slowing down with Julia, we'll probably do a weekly Julia episode. We'll do a review day of a show that we watch, and we'll see what's going on in the news. You know, but it's up to you guys to make sure the show gets pushed out. Ron has been. What is that? Ow. It's up to you guys to help me get the show back on the roads. I really do appreciate everyone that shares, that likes. Trust me, liking the stream and sharing is massive. It doesn't cost anything. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. And yeah, lots to come. It was weird though, because I sort of sat down today and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? I can't remember. I mean, it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and it's now Wednesday, right? I've never had 5 days off from the Sean Atwood channel. You know, like I think mad, crazy. Oh man, I tell you what though, I really enjoyed unplugging. Unplugging was just awesome, right? So if anyone has got like a spare $120 and you want to experience unplugging, throw your phone out a window. Just wait a couple of days and then get the screen fixed. And I'm telling you, you're going to have a couple of days where for the first half an hour, you're going to be like, oh my God. But then after that, you're going to be like, oh, wow, look outside. That's nice. It's crazy. Julia's apparently in really good spirits, been hitting the gym. But we'll talk about all that tomorrow. Don't worry. Big shout out to everyone that's been keeping me up to date with stuff as well. Somebody, I can't remember who it is, but there's one lady who is very dedicated. So cheers to you in my emails. I leave my phone at home. I leave my phone at home a lot. See, nah, I would freak out if I was out. See if I was to be out somewhere without my phone, knowingly. Like, not if it's broken. Like, if I knowingly am like, oh, I'm going to leave my phone behind. I'm just thinking about every possible way the world is going to end during the time I'm away from my phone. Okay. Like in some scenarios, like the Libyans, like from Back to the Future, they all attack, and I'm stuck between the Libyans and getting home to my phone to warn the world, and that gives me massive anxiety problems. Like, you've no idea what it's like to have a hyper processing brain. Like, I don't need you to give me a topic or a scenario, and then in 8 or 9 seconds, every outcome possible be evaluated by my brain. It's just unnecessary. Just relax. Like, take a day off. So it's good. Yeah. It's good times. It's good times. Good times. What time is it? 20 to 4. Editing, and then get something for dinner. Continue on my healthy journey. I tell you what, man, this all happened because I looked up a BMI calculator, right? And put all my stats into a BMI calculator and felt really offended what the BMI calendar had to say. And the fact, and do you know what this is? It's not even about healthier living, right? It's about principles, okay? And there's green on the BMI calendar where you want to be. And then there's about 9 shades before you get to a deep red, which basically says, fatty gonna die, right? And I'm like, sound, right? Sound BMI. So now it's just a game of making the red turn green. That's it. That's all it is. So I'm getting a Peloton delivered at the start of April as well for some for the next phase of this. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. This is gonna be great. But a healthier living, better mindset. You know what I'm saying? It's good times. Start pulling apart the garden, get that looking good, bit of labor, get the old throwing knife freaking station set back. I don't want to go swimming. All right. I don't want to go swimming. I don't want to leave the house, Emma. I don't want to leave the house. I've been running up and down the stairs, right? Calculating how many steps I've done up and down the stairs. And I want to see if I can start working my way through the Scottish Munros, right? By running up and down the stairs in the equivalent of feet to go up the Munros. I want to do all the Scottish Munros without leaving the house. And well, I can't remember what else. But leaving the house, nah, man. Nah. Not got time for that. Not got time for that. So I have got half an hour a day to run up the stairs and then jump on a Peloton and do 20 minutes of interval training a couple of times a day. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And I tell you what, I will film myself the first morning after the first interval training trying to walk down the stairs with my legs going like, oh my God. Oh yeah. See, if you're in the groove, Emma, 100%. 100%. I'm not saying swimming's bad. It's awesome. It's awesome. But it's just, nah. And then, do you know, weights, dumbbells and dumbbell bars. I don't know what goes on in Edinburgh, right? But they're the most given away thing next to paving slabs, right, on free cycle ever, right? Why anyone buys weights, I don't know. Go on like your local free cycle style website and everyone is giving away weights. There must be a set, everyone's dad or uncle who's like passed over now, whose sheds are getting cleared out, weights, right? So I'm going to go picture up a bunch of them and start doing some neck, shoulders, back stuff. Right, we've done it, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to thank you all for being here. You're all so beautiful, okay? It's Wednesday. It's the hump day. All downhill to the weekend. I want to thank you all for being here, for supporting me, supporting the Sean Atwood channel. Please, please, please share. Tomorrow's show is already up, 1:30 for the Julia update. And then tomorrow night, we're back with the new Awakening with Beverly Road show. It's a mega one, and it's going to be a big weekly event where we've got a guest, we've got a topic, and then we've got a practical hour towards the end where we look at crystals or cards or some things that you guys can be taking part in, learning and enjoying. Ron wants to turn it into like a weekly Hogwarts experience where we have a lecturer, then we have a topic of discussion, and then we have a practical section. Nice. All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being amazing. And I will see you all tomorrow. I love you guys. Take it easy.